What I thought I'd just start with is the little introduction for those people who haven't been on a DAPChat before, just about DAPnet itself, and our mission. The Draft Animal Power Network is a group of practitioners with a shared commitment to preserving traditional draft animal practices while advancing innovative solutions for land stewardship, food production, and community enrichment. Our mission is to provide connection to resources that preserve and advance the use of draft animal power in the working landscape. Given that, I'd like to introduce Ruth Burke. We met in Germany a little over a year ago, and Ruth at the World Working Draft Cattle Symposium. And Ruth said, you need to come to MODA. And I said, okay. So I met her in MODA. And I said, you need to come to DAPnet, the field days. And she came to field days. So here we are again, connecting again and sharing experiences. Ruth, I got this from your field days. Ruth is an ox drover, artist, professor at Illinois State University. She runs Oxeye Farm in Bloomington, Illinois, which is an oxen-powered micro farm that provides farm fresh eggs, pastured pork, and sometimes native plants to her community. Ruth loves native plants, pure prairies, sustainable farming, art, and animals. So Ruth, with that, maybe you can tell us about yourself.
Yeah. So I always say that I'm an animal first, I think, and I know I'm in good company here. But when I think about like, what am I? I'm an animal. All humans are animals, and there's actually not this divide or binary between humans and animals in the way that we have been taught to think about that. So I'm an animal. I'm an artist. I'm an interdisciplinary artist. So that means I do a little bit of everything, and I primarily focus on earthworks. I focus on installation, sculpture, performance, some sound art, and my work changes depending on the projects that I'm doing. But all of my work revolves around our relationship with animals, with the natural world. The species that I mostly focus on are our relationship with farm animals. And I'm interested in that because we have spent the last 10,000 years evolving, co-evolving alongside specific species. And when I think about what it means to be human, I have to question, what does it mean to be a cow, to be a horse, to be a sheep, to be a chicken? I am a professor as well, so teaching is a large part of what I do. I really enjoy working with young people, young adults, and helping young artists foster their own creative vision and helping them kind of find their way in the world. And that I'm a first generation farmer in Bloomington, Illinois. And when I say we, my husband and I, we own 8 acres and lease another 7 3/4. So where we are in the land of corn and soybeans. So 8 acres, 15 acres is certainly a micro farm here. And I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. I lived in Michigan for about 7 years, and I moved to Illinois in 2021. And I'm a proud MODA member, proud DAPNet member. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here chatting with all of you today. And I'm really honored by the invitation.
Awesome, awesome. When did you first become interested in draft cattle?
While I was living in Michigan doing my graduate studies at the University of Michigan, I, and that was really when I was fostering this idea of interspecies kinship or relationships to animals in my creative practice. I was working on a micro dairy. I was working under farmer Ruth Amen, and she has it's about 40 or 50 acre farm, 40 35, 40 minutes north of Ann Arbor. And she hand milks her cows. And I was really interested in that practice and the intimacy of hand milking. And while I was apprenticing on her farm, which ended up being about 7 years, and just developing this wonderful relationship and being able to absorb all this knowledge about how to be a good animal and land steward, I started to see the animals as coworkers and realizing like this is a collaborative thing. Like if that cow doesn't want to get up in the morning, good luck getting her up into the barn, right? She needs to want to come in to get milked. And in 2018, I was starting to just dream up if I had every resource, if I had all the time in the world, what would my dream project look like? So I was starting to just think about what is this next chapter going to be? And in that process of ideating new art projects, I was thinking about like, how do I involve animals as really direct collaborators? And my my background as an artist and my education as an artist also involved this history of land art. And so I was thinking about earthworks. And in the contemporary art world, an earthwork is a type of art that is made by shaping the land itself. Earthworks can be in galleries using, or museums using natural materials, but they're most often found outdoors using natural materials to actually sculpt, basically. And in thinking about how might one create an earthwork holistically, um, I came to draft animal power. So in the 60s, 70s, 80s, there's a long history of mostly men going in and altering the landscape using heavy machinery and altering the landscape to, in many ways, show a human kind of touch to it. And I didn't want to do that. So part of this work came out of protest, and like I don't want to do that thing. I'm interested in this practice, but I don't want to be aligned with that specific history. And I realized that I had not seen anybody, any other artists making earthworks with draft animal power. So I'm really interested in interspecies labor, collaborative labor, and how that manifests. And when I think about the way that we exist in our world, I think it is this process of co-creation, right? Like, good luck doing anything without pollinators. Good luck doing anything without trees, right, that clean our air. And I think animal traction was this really like explicit low hanging fruit and thinking about like what does interspecies labor look like. So that's how I kind of got interested in draft animal power, was through this dream of these large scale earthworks.
Well, awesome. So what resources or educational resources did you use to learn about draft animal power? I mean, have you had cattle before?
No,
You
my experience with cattle really came out of working at Firesign Family Farm in Michigan, where I was working with Ruth Amen. And I am a haptic learner. So I learned through like doing the thing. The experience of apprenticing with her and learning from her was just like exponentially important to my ability to take care of animals now. I grew up riding horses, doing a little bit of competitive riding. So I felt pretty confident in my ability to like take care of a horse, but taking care of a horse is not taking care of a cow. It's not taking care of chickens, right? All these things are different. You have to treat the species differently. So I think I've got my cattle chops through apprenticing with Ruth. And from 2018 to the end of 2020, I was just looking at, in addition to this apprenticing, I was really looking at all of the educational resources in the form of like books and YouTube videos and resources that were put out by DAPNet and MODA. before I really took a leap into, okay, am I going to go to Tillers and then take some classes? So in 2021, when I had some institutional support through Illinois State University, I spent like a most of my startup money I spent on classes at Tillers, which I always get a good laugh out of, that the people in the comptrollers, that's the folks who control the money at the
Yeah.
university, are like, who is this professor in the art department like signing up for a Oxen Basics course? Like what's going on there? Um, so once I was ready to start taking some classes, I went to Tillers and I took every single draft animal class they offered. When I started taking their classes, I had not yet decided, am I going to get draft horses or am I going to get oxen? And I was when I took the first draft horse basics course with Don, I was like, I'm gonna go get a pair of horses. And I was pretty set on Suffolks because they are small enough. I'm about 5'3", 5'4", and I was like, that is a critter small enough where I can get the harness over them without needing a step stool.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted a team that was not green in any way. I was like, I'm going to need to learn more from them. I'm going to need them to teach me. And that process took a while, right? I was like looking casually, and during that time, I went and took the Oxen Basics course, and I was just like, love horses, but forget them for this project. I'm gonna
That
go
did
with
it. That
yes,
did
I'm
it.
gonna go with cattle. And I think too, it was also partial novelty, right? It was like something new. But I was just really struck by the different ways of working with them, and I just fell in love. So 2021 took all of Tiller's classes. 6 months after the last, or maybe it was less, a few months after the last Tiller's class, I got my team Clark and Sparky, and then since then, ongoing education has been like showing up at things like DAPNet, showing up at MODA gatherings. In 2024, having the opportunity to go to the World Draft Cattle Symposium. And I think in a big way that the way I position my practice as an artist based on these other animal experiences I've had in the past is it's just part of this like lifelong multi-species education. So always learning.
Always learning, right? So you said that you first wanted horses and you wanted a team that knew everything. So tell us about your team and how you got started with them, because that was different.
Yes. So Clark and Sparky are the most wonderful boys ever. They are a 4-year-old team of milking shorthorn. They are now oxen since they are 4, which is exciting to say. And when I started looking for a team of at that time working steers, I had seen that Erica Marzak had posted Clark and Sparky, and they were yearlings. And I did a little digging. They were far away. I think they were in Virginia. They were in Virginia at that time, and I was like, okay, let me do some like internet creeping on this Erica person. And I realized like, okay, this is the president of DAPNet. She obviously knows what she's doing with livestock, with horses, with oxen. And that that was a big factor in buying a team sight unseen and having them shipped from Virginia to Illinois. I hadn't seen Clark and Sparky until
So
they stepped
sight
off the
unseen.
trailer. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I think that that says something about the community, right? Is like it was really Erica's word that like this is a good team. And the fact that they were handy, that was important to me. I think in the posts, the original like sale post, Erica had also said that they had been mostly trained by a team of like young kids, I think they were 9 and 12 or something like that. That was a huge selling point for me as well. Like, okay, they're cool around little people. Um, yeah, and Clark he's the roan that, you see on your right here, he's my nigh. He is super affectionate. He's a big softie. He's a little bit insecure, which I think makes him like extra bonded to me. And he's big. He's real big. He's 2,280 pounds. And he's the boss of the team. And he's just really sweet. He's very, very sweet. He's like always game for a cuddle, loves to be groomed. So he loves when we show up in events and we just stand around and don't do any work. He is very happy to just be pet for like 9 hours. And then Sparky is the red ox, and he is extremely bright, which as we have been learning how to plow recently, I'm so glad that he is the critter in the furrow because he picked up on that right away. He's super athletic. He's more confident. So I think it took a little bit longer to bond with him. Um, and he has also become very sweet and affectionate. Sparky is really sensitive to touch. Clark is really sensitive um to like verbal communication. So it's funny sometimes if they're not, if I need to be a little bit of a disciplinarian, I might have to like give Sparky a touch, and then Clark, I might just have to yell at him. And they're like, okay, all right, we're gonna do the thing.
Now, has Clark always been your nigh?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've always been that way. Okay.
Yep. And Sparky moves at a faster pace. I think maybe it's just size. Sparky's also really stretchy. He's pretty tall, super long legs. So I realized when we were getting to know each other that it was really handy that the slower ox was my nigh, because if they did get ahead of me, they would just end up sort of turning around because Sparky moves much faster.
Wow. So what was it like getting this team that's a year old delivered to you, and how did you get to
That
know them and work with them?
Yeah, I mean, that was like I think when they got off the trailer, that was like one of the best days of my life, so far. It really was. And one of the first things that I had posted on the All Things Oxen page, which is a wonderful resource. If you're not on there, you should be, is like, hey, I have this team of yearlings coming off of a long trailer ride. What do I do with them in the first few days? Like, do I put them in the yoke and do we go for a casual walk? Do I just let them settle? And a lot of the feedback that I got was like, let them settle, go spend some time with them, brush them, just be with them. So I was really glad I followed that, because I think they also were able to connect me like, okay, this is the person who's going to take care of us. This is also the food lady, which is the title I wear very proudly with all my animals. So those first few days of just settling together, and them realizing like, oh, all the good things, which are like food and scratches and nice words, they come from this person. But I think one of the biggest learning curves was that like everything takes a lot more time than I imagined. So it's like I'm always learning something new about them, and it's been productive to sort of detach from like a goal of like in 3 months we're going to be able to do this thing, or I'm going to know this thing about them. You just have to spend the time, and that happens organically.
Wow. So tell me about your goals with your team, starting then and then maybe now.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of my goals are somewhat abstract. Um, I want to have a relationship based in trust and patience and collaboration. I want my all of my animals to feel like they can express themselves. I think that's really important, and that's something that came out of I have a very opinionated horse, and he is not stoic. And if he does not like something, he will tell you. And I've had him since 2019. And I've never had such an opinionated animal in my entire life. But that was really lovely because I was like, I'm able to read you better because you feel comfortable expressing yourself. So I do want Clark and Sparky to always feel like they can signal to me that like something is making us nervous, that we don't feel confident doing something, because that helps me understand, okay, maybe we need to take a few steps back. So based in positivity, based in trust, that's really like my overarching goal in working with them. And I want to always continue to see them as coworkers, as collaborators. On a more practical level, like we're slowly introducing more and more implements. So I would love to get them on a mower eventually. But the I did the mower intensive at the DAPNet Field Days. I was really glad I did that because I think I probably would have just gone and bought a mower and not known how to work it. And I was like, okay, maybe that might be more of like a 3 or 4 year goal for us. Um, yeah, so I think the addition of like implements along the way, that's one of my goals. And one of the aspects of working with them in the context of art that feels really liberating is that the process of making a piece, of making an earthwork, is in many ways supersedes the outcome. So there's always room for us to like move a little bit slower, to take a few steps back if we need it. Um, to again, just make sure that everything is based in trust and patience and love.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that communication with them, and it just brings me to, the times where I'm asking my team, you know, I tell them gee, but I really mean haw. And I step away and they look at me, they stop and go, what? Like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah,
like, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, yeah, 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 haw. I mean, but they're like, what are you doing?
yeah.
Anyway,
And it's funny how like once they get to know you, um, because in this I don't always know my own left from right, right? So it's like when I say G and we do a ha, sometimes they're like, "Lady, we know what you mean." All right, yeah. So
oh,
it is funny.
they let it go. Okay.
They do. Yes, yeah, they do let it go. I think our um the strongest aspect of our communication toolbox is body language. So I think the verbal commands and then the goad is certainly second to that.
Yeah. So, do you have a mentor or mentors, and how have they helped you?
Yeah. Yes, I have so many mentors. I've been
So
extremely,
many.
extremely lucky. Um, Rob Collins has been a wonderful mentor. Tim Harrigan, who I know is on this call right now, has been a wonderful mentor, and Tim especially coming from the world of academia and his research being tied in with animal traction. He has just been so generous and like kind and helpful to me, not only as an ox drover, but also as an academic. So helping me navigate that space as a junior faculty. So super, super appreciate and love you, Tim. Thank you. Ed Nelson, who is a very, very long time member of MODA and lives quite close to me, has been a wonderful mentor. Douglas Kaufman Dixon, who also lives very close here in Illinois. And I think like all the members of MODA and DAPNet, that's one of the wonderful things about the internet is having this place to ask questions, to search through the questions that other people have asked and just see how generous folks are with their knowledge. It's really wonderful. Emily Tim and Lori Volden, who drive horses up in Wisconsin, have been good mentors to me. And when I think about like how all of these folks have just helped me do what I'm doing now, it's like it's advice, it's counsel, it's equipment on feedback on equipment. It's yeah, just like incredibly, it's a very generous community. So I'm very appreciative and I hope to pay that forward when I know enough.
Yeah. So for people who are new, who want to get into work draft animals, what can you recommend for finding mentors?
So I think showing up at the events,
Mhm.
DAPNet field days, showing up at MODA, um, that's really, really valuable. When the first MODA that I attended, I had no idea that there were folks that were just 40 minutes away from my house. So that I think showing up at those events, and I know that it can be a lot of travel for folks, but you get a year's notice about that happening, save your money, like buy the flight, buy buy the gas for your car and go. I think it's really, really important to show up at those. And um, yeah, I think finding folks with common interests that will sort of recognize what you are trying to achieve with your team and folks you respect. Um, but yeah, the internet is helpful, and I think in-person interactions are more helpful for that.
So who or what has had the greatest influence on how you work your animals?
Mm. So for people I don't know, Dr. Temple Grandin, all of her research has been very, very influential in the way that I sort of approach and just exist alongside different types of livestock. Also Ruth Amen, my mentor in Michigan, she was the woman who really gave me my cattle chops to be able to take care of animals. Having that time apprenticing on her farm was life changing. And uh, Tim Harrigan had said to me once when I think I'd asked a question about conditioning, and he said, "Go light, go often." And that has really like I'm a pretty heavily tattooed person. I'm like that might end up being a tattoo at some point. That just like that's the way to do it, right? Like even if you're just getting out for 20 minutes, pull something light, go often. So that's really stuck with me and thinking about the time that you put in your animals.
So we have some pictures that you've provided. Could you maybe go through some of
Sure.
them and just tell us about them?
Yeah. The image you're looking at was taken yesterday. And I made sure to like wear my DAPNet gear that day. But this was at the field day event we held at the Illinois State University Horticulture Center, which is the site of a forthcoming earthwork that is made with animal power, draft animal power. So we had two teams of horses, two teams of oxen, and then a single horse out working that day. And we had crappy weather, but a great turnout. So overall, it was a lovely day. We had about 150 people show up.
And so tell us about what you're doing here.
Oh, we are on a disc. We are on a sulky disc, which is by far my favorite implement. And
Why is that?
what's that?
Why is that?
Oh, I think it's really versatile in that, like, with the right soil conditions, I could turn over my entire garden. If I had to choose one tool, I would choose a disc. I could turn over my entire garden. One of the projects that I'm working on is a SARE grant. So that's the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. It's a partnership grant. I'm working with 4 farmers in my county, in McLean County, Illinois, and one of the members is also a MODA member, Ron Navis. He has a team of brown Swiss that are giant. Like if you think Clark and Sparky are big, they are huge. And he has also been working on establishing pollinator plots for many, many years. One of the cool things I've learned from working with him is that you can actually, he uses a disc to seed pollinator plots. So the disc makes enough of a indentation in the earth, and you just put your seed right in there, and they do really well. They function just as well as a seeder. Yeah, so I love the disc.
Awesome. And what about the next one, Daphne? Are you in?
I'm trying to, I don't know if it's working. I don't know why. Oh, here you go.
Yeah.
Ah,
That's my buddy Clark. Um, yeah, that's the super affectionate ox, in case you can't tell. This was from a photo shoot that we had with the university marketing and communications team, and I'll actually grab. So one of the one of the cool things about having all this institutional support to do my work is that can we see that there? Let me put my hand. Might not be able to see it. I could send a link out. But Clark and Sparky are on the cover of our Scholar magazine this this spring, which is great. So they've sort of become the unofficial mascots of our university. And yeah, so the university photographers came out.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You didn't tell us what you teach and what you studied and what you do at
Ah,
the university. And then I have another question after.
that was
yeah.
the next question, Daphne.
Oh, sorry.
Well, perfect. We're ahead of it.
We're
I
perfect.
so I teach video art. So that's moving image art. It's mostly experimental moving image practice. So it's not film. I teach mostly experimental stuff that might include like performance art videos, non-narrative moving image video installation. And then I also occasionally teach graduate seminars and other like one-off seminars. I'm teaching a class in spring 2026 that's going to be about draft animals and art making and land earthworks. So that'll be a special topics course. And I got my undergrad degree from Ohio State University, and I studied art and technology. So that was art mediated by, for the most part, anything that works on electricity. And then my master's degree is from the University of Michigan, and I studied interdisciplinary studio art, which means whatever you want it to mean.
Do I have space for another question?
Uh,
I'm wondering, how much of the work you do on your farm with your oxen, and do you have like a tractor or anything, or is it only oxen? And do you rely on them to make, production on the farm?
Yes. So we actually bought a tractor last August. So we went about 2.5 years, strictly oxen powered, and I was so glad that we didn't have a tractor right away. And I actually rarely take it. I mean, we use it for brush hogging and then turning the compost. But any kind of like manure management, I'm getting the oxen out for that. And one of the things that has been really eye-opening is actually like how darn useful they are on small acreage. We have lots of trees, especially for central Illinois, and it can sometimes be a pain in the butt to get the tractor out and have to maneuver it. But the boys they're very handy, right? Like it's much faster for me to fill up our stone boat with manure and use them to bring it over to the compost pile. So yeah, so they're super, super useful. Very appreciative of all their labor and their willingness to work. Because it's a lot more fun. Like the tractor doesn't love you back, right? Tractor's not happy to see you when you go out to the machine shed.
That's true.
Thank you.
So tell, this was the question, but about your work and your so the project. So could you tell us about that earthworks and how your cattle are involved in that?
Yeah, the earthworks are these animal power, and I probably should have included a couple photos, but you can go to my website later if you want to look at that. The earthworks are planted with native species primarily. And instead of coming out and using a tractor to till up the land, in all of these projects, we employ draft animal power to do all that work. So as I was thinking about like what is the most holistic way, if we're doing this work not only in service of giving the human audience a aesthetic experience that helps connect us to something outside of ourselves, but also doing that work in service of these critical pollinators who desperately need food sources and habitats. Draft animal power is a much more eco-friendly way to actually carry out these projects. And again, referring back to the process superseding the outcome, working with draft animals is much more interesting, and I find that the collaborative nature of having to shape the earthworks to the capabilities of draft animals, in addition to the topography of the land, the capacity of these institutions that host these earthworks to care for them afterwards, just makes for a much more interesting and unique experience than being like, yep, we're gonna come in there and work with a tractor and it's going to come out exactly perfectly in these like straight lines if they're strips. So yeah, so thinking about this like idea of interspecies labor coming into all different levels of these projects. So that's the earthworks, and those have been my main focus in my practice for a few years now. But during the winter, like I might make some experimental films, and I might go into my studio and make some prints, and I might make some sculptures, or I might make some sound works, or I might make some performances. But I don't like being in my studio when the sun is out and it's nice enough to be outside. So I really feel a lot of satisfaction by just working outside.
And so you have quite a great job then there, if working with your cattle is part of your job.
Yes, I am the luckiest artist in the entire world. And when I was in an undergraduate at Ohio State, I worked for a very, very well-known artist in Hamilton, and I think that made my brain have these potentially unrealistic expectations about what my career could look like. And I realized that I am interested in making primarily the type of work that is not going to be shown in a gallery, is not going to be shown in a way that is ever going to make me money. Like I don't make money off of my work. I need institutional support to do that. And as a professor, part of my job is teaching, which I love, and part of my job is making my work. So at 20 years old, I realized like if I want to make this type of conceptually driven, non-commodifiable work, the teaching is the way to do that.
So tell us about this photo right here. This is on the site of the university, right?
This is not.
Oh, this is not. Okay.
No. So this was last weekend. We
Yep.
went down to McLean, Illinois, which is a very small village about
Yeah.
20, 25, 28 minutes south of us. And I was invited by my friend Jeff, who is on the walking plow behind Clark and Sparky. He is also working with me on the SARE partnership grant. And a few months ago, he said, hey, our village just voted to establish a community garden. Is there any chance that Clark and Sparky would be willing to come down and plow it for us? And I said, we are still, if you are willing to deal with a team of novice plowers, yes, we will. So we were able to go down there last weekend, and Clark and Sparky got some great plow experience, and it was really helpful too, to have, to have Jeff there who was willing to be on the plow. And then my husband came and relieved him after a couple hours. But it was great experience for Clark and Sparky, and they did really, really well. This was certainly their biggest and durationally longest time that they had spent pulling a plow. So it wasn't perfect, but we had also planned, somebody came and rototilled the garden immediately after. So yeah, so it was great experience for them, and they did really good. They got 3 days off after this, because I was like, you guys were really good boys. And it was interesting too, because at my place, I don't have necessarily this long. It was about 240 feet straightaway, and they just had not had that long of a straightaway to plow. So it was really interesting to see the spots that I thought, okay, Sparky's going to stay in the furrow. We're going to be able to do this nice and straight. That was affected by the soil conditions. So yeah, so I learned a lot, and like what I need to be asking up front before we kind of take on some of these jobs. But they did really good. I was proud of them.
Now, is this the site where you said you had people pulling up lawn chairs watching you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was sweet.
Is
Tim
that
has a
because it's?
question.
Oh, go ahead, Daphne.
Tim does.
Oh, Tim, go ahead.
Okay,
Go
I
ahead,
had
Tim.
had to unmute. This is not a plowing question, but listening to your interesting stories, I'm kind of reflecting on my time with oxen, and I had started earlier in an earlier life with a fair amount of dairy cattle experience, and I thought I was fairly proficient in cattle until I started training cattle to work. So I'm wondering if there were things that really surprised you about training Clark and Sparky and actually training them to work for you that you didn't realize you didn't know working with dairy cattle. Did I phrase that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I'm still at the point in my career where I'm like, I know nothing. And maybe I'll always be like, I don't know if I know any, and you learn something new and you're like, it undoes everything that you thought you knew before. But I think based off of the experience I had, at the farm in Michigan and trying to transfer that, I think the biggest takeaway was that everything had to be catered for the individual animal. So like when I'm asking Clark to do something, it's different than how I'm going to ask Sparky to do something, because they are motivated by um, different things. So Sparky doesn't care if I yell at him. Clark does care. So I think it was like, okay, you really have to take on their individual learning styles, where at the farm it was, even though having this lovely intimate relationship with all of the different cows, I sort of treated them all the same. So that was certainly a learning curve. And then with training, the level of emotional regulation I needed to um, that I needed to sort of take on in every interaction that I had with them. Like, I felt like the dairy cows didn't, if you got frustrated with them, it was like, you could kind of just like, okay, you're not going to get up. I'm gonna go get the other cows and I'll come back to you later. But I am naturally a pretty high energy person, and cattle like calm and cool and collected. So that for me has been a lot of like internal work that I've had to do to be like, my natural inclination is not what I need to bring out to the barnyard. And I do think I don't like the word leader because I think it maybe suggests some kind of hierarchy, but like they are looking to me to be a leader. And I can't do that if I'm feeling hot under the collar. So a lot of the amount of emotional regulation in our actual work interactions was also a big learning curve for me.
Yeah, I think many of us on here that work with cattle are sharing your experiences right now, so very good.
Thank you.
I mean, on that, I mean, I started with horses, from decades. And I thought, well, I'll just apply sort of what I know and see how it goes. And there were all kinds and sorts of, and you mentioned this earlier, that you knew horses, you're not going to apply the same type of um, training or bring the same type of energy. But there were so many surprises. And I was expecting, for example, bringing them for first time on a trailer. And I cleared the day, because having a horse, you clear the day on having them load and stand and all that. And I brought them out to it, and they just wandered right on it and wanted to lap it and lick it and eat it, and were perfectly happy to stand there. I was like, oh, okay. But that type of difference, I so appreciate how they look at things. It really makes you need to slow down. That's my feeling, need to slow down and really just think about how you're interacting with them.
Yeah. And there's something that never ceases to amaze me, uh, just about like the sort of steadiness of cattle as compared to horses. And maybe it's because I spent most of my youth around riding horses. My horse is like pretty hot. He's reactive. But the impulse to like run away from something scary, like Clark and Sparky don't have that. Like they might take a few steps back, but then it's like, we're actually going to go investigate whatever that thing is. Just on Friday or Saturday morning, I had like a 6.5 foot big branch break off of a tree, and it fell, I don't know, 4 feet away from the hitching post, which like probably should trim those trees because that could be dangerous. But they didn't even, it scared me more than it scared them. They didn't even bat an eye. So it's like, I think there's something to be taken from the ethos of like, be be more like the boys, calm.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So tell me, what have been the most rewarding moments working with your team?
There have been large rewarding moments that feel monumental, and then there have been the smaller everyday rewarding moments. Some of the larger rewards that have come through and are in like finishing projects, going out to the field day yesterday, and they were very, very good all day. So it's like coming home and being like, our presence at this event reflected really positively on draft animal power to sort of the lay person. Those are always very, very rewarding. I really love seeing Clark and Sparky with little kids. Sometimes they will be hesitant about adults, mostly men, because they don't get driven by a lot of men. But then a little kid comes over and they're just like, okay, it's sleep time. Like I know this kid is gonna sit here and he's gonna give me scratches, So that's really sweet. I really love witnessing those moments. And then I think the most like rewarding, sustaining moments that just breathe so much life into my world are where we go out for conditioning walks and we're pulling the tire. And I always try not to take the exact same path when we go on these walks, and they're usually like an hour, hour and a half. But when it's like we're going on our walk and I don't say anything and the goat is in the like relaxed position and I know we're using body language to communicate, but it's like, and we're not just going on a straight line, like we're taking turns. And it's like we're reading each other's minds. And it's like everything is so in sync that it feels like we're all in the same wavelength. Like those moments are just, I don't know, really, really fulfilling.
That's awesome. That's great. There's a comment from Matt Schofield. He said, I can definitely relate to you in regards to emotional regulation, being calm, cool, and collected for the betterment of everyone involved. It is sometimes tough to learn.
Yeah.
It is.
It is. And some people's and I'm always sort of envious of these folks. Some people's disposition is just calm, cool, and collected. That's just how they move through the world. And that's not me. So it has been this process of like I think unlearning uh learned reactions. And also, if I'm getting frustrated, just being like, hey, we can stop and stand here. They're happy to stand there for 15 minutes. They're very good at standing around. And it's like, if I need to go cool off, that they're not going to tell me, Ruth, you need to go take a little break and just like sit down for a second. I have to be the one to say, this is a moment. We're just going to stand around for a few minutes. And then once I get my sheep together, we're gonna resume our activity.
Tim, do you have a question?
Yeah. Along these lines, I've always found it very interesting working with cattle. And I'm going to mention horses here a little bit, and I may get a little pushback because I really have no experience with horses. But the effort to establish clear and intentional direction to cattle, I suspect might take longer than with horses, because with horses you have a physical connection to the horse through the reins and the bit, but you don't have that with an ox. And I really appreciate your comment, because when you have those moments where you're communicating very clearly and you just keep your mouth shut and go, it's really nice, but it takes a long time. And along the way, you learn to check your emotions, and you learn to understand that, well, many times you need to break that cattle logic is not our logic.
Yes.
And we go into it with our logic, and we're doomed to fail unless we're paying attention. So you learn that you have to break things down many times into little pieces that seem so obvious. But no, maybe they're a little bit worried about the single tree back that is now dragging on your left trace chain if you're going single versus your right, because they're not used to it. I mean, there are just so many things that can unsettle them, and maybe you can correct that with horses easier with connection through a bit. I don't know. If you want to comment on that.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate it, because I don't know. It just seems to me like it would be.
Yeah, I think, that's one of the things that frustrates me so deeply about when people say, well, cows are stupid or chickens are stupid. And it's like, compared to who? Compared to, you can't compare the intelligence of one species to another. Like, I also don't, you know, I might mistake a poison hemlock plant for a wild carrot and go ahead and eat that and then die. These guys aren't going to do that because the minute their lips touch it, it's like something in their wiring says this is a no. So yeah, I think that is one of the uh, human exceptionalism traps that we fall into is not considering that there are so many other ways to look at the world, to experience the world. And one of the aspects of working with cattle that I really appreciate is that when we're walking together, we're all sort of like moving. I'm not behind them with lines, and we're sharing the same eye lines, right? So we're all sort of looking out. They have much better eyesight than I do, but um, I think that closeness helps me perceive the world in a greater way than I could if I'm on my own. And it's that same phenomena of like you're out in the pasture and your animals prick their ears and look one way. And then 3 minutes later, you see what they're looking at, right? So I think that just that act of like driving them, that, that attunes me to so much more in the world that otherwise I wouldn't be able to pick up. And I do agree that the willingness to do whatever it is I'm asking them does feel, and I don't want to piss off any of the horse people, but it does feel a little bit more like a choice, right? Because I don't have a bit in a sensitive part of their body, right? There's not a piece of metal in their mouth. And
It seems like
kudos to,
it seems like an ask rather than a tell.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And to go back to my horse that I have, you don't tell that horse to do anything. So maybe I got some good conditioning leading up to me taking stewardship of Clark and Sparky, but he is not everything is an ask with him. So maybe that helped me approach cattle in a better way, where it was like, okay, everything is somewhat of a negotiation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I have a mare and you never tell her what to do. And then you get what you need with a look, but you still get it, but it's always an ask. It has
Yeah.
to be. And I agree with that. And Tim, to your point about breaking things down, I was trying to teach my team to pivot in the pole with a cart. And I broke it down into little pieces, moving the front, just moving the back, just kind of, so it wouldn't be difficult, making it as slow as possible, which is hard because you try to speed things up and then everything falls apart. And I hadn't done, doing this for a long time and they were getting better. And I didn't do that for a while. And I had them in the cart and I just asked them to do a turn. They just did it. They did the whole thing. And I don't think we had ever gotten there separately. But they remembered it and they kind of, yeah, this is what we do. We move our legs this way and we can pivot that. But that was a remarkable thing to see. It's like they were understanding that the whole time.
Yeah. That's also been a really rewarding part of seeing Clark and Sparky get a little bit older is also the way that they seem to retain information. Like we don't have to drill things as much. They pick things up faster, but their memory is insane. Like it is really remarkable that and it's they don't seem to associate if we do have a act like there was one time we were pulling something out of my trailer and it made a huge banging noise and they ran quickly about 30 feet. And for maybe a day and a half, they were scared of the trailer. And then, it was just like, oh, wait, no, there was this incident it wasn't the trailer itself. It was the incident at the trailer. So they seem to like forget the bad things. They don't associate like horses do. Like here was this moment where this thing happened and now I'm scared of that spot. Yeah, they it's been nice, and I think that's comes out of too putting the time in when they are younger, that if I don't do anything with them for a week and a half, they will moo at me because they will get bored. But it's not like we need to work for 5 days in a row to get back up to speed. It's like after 20 minutes and they kind of got their whatever squirrelies out, they're zoned back in to whatever it is we're doing.
That's great. What has been the greatest challenge training your team?
Me. Me. Yeah, me, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's emotional regulation, uh, discipline, even when it's like 9 degrees out and I don't want to go outside and do it's all been me. I have been the biggest challenge. I think I got really lucky. I have a good team. They both have good brains. They seem to like to work. So I have been, I think, in every way that if there's something we haven't done that I wanted to do, it's me, not them.
Not them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could we go through a couple more of the pictures? I think we've only seen a couple. All right. Tell us about this one.
This was our first year. There's so little there. This was our first year at MODA, where we got to participate in the Saturday haymaking. So that's, if you haven't been to MODA before, you should get there on Saturday, weather permitting. And they usually have the hay cut before we go out and work, but they use like a hay bine pulled by oxen. They will load hay up on your cart, and then they will use a pair of hay tongs, I don't know what you call those, to pull up loose hay into the second story of a beautiful old barn. So this was great experience for them, and just like having a lot of people around them. We're it's just me and my husband at my place. My husband works a lot because he's got to finance the farm. So it's usually just me out working with them. So this was a great experience where we just got to have a lot of people around the cart, forking hay into it, and then having this big scary thing come down from the sky, pick up the load of hay, and pull it back up. But they were very little.
Awesome. Daphne, can you go to the next one?
This was our first ride in our cart. I was able, with institutional support, I was able to commission MODA to build us a cart that I specifically asked to be built like a tank, knowing that eventually, if I drove the cart like I drive my trailer, we're going to run into something. So 1 year at the gathering, I think it was in 2023, we built this cart, and this was our first ride on it. And they had up until this weekend, they had never been on a cart at all. So this was a really lovely effort by MODA members, and this was another item where the comptroller at my university was like, I'm just double checking what you're asking for $2,000 for, like an ox cart. And when when I started my job, and I used some of my startup money, I think, to buy that first winter's hay, and the I think the people with the money didn't believe me. They were like, "Can you send us a picture of these oxen that you have?" And I sent them a picture, and they were like, "Okay." Um, and then occasionally I will get emails from folks in that office just being like, "How are Clark and Sparky doing? Can you send us some photos?" So yeah, this was a really great effort, and been a very, very useful cart. I have babied the heck out of this cart. It has not seen a drop of rain.
It's a beauty.
Yes. And then Leslie's sister took this photo, right,
Oh,
Leslie?
A friend of mine.
Friend, yes.
Awesome. Daphne, can we go to the next one? Tell us about this.
This is a video still from our first year that we were doing this really as a demonstration, but working out at the ISU Horticulture Center. So this site is the same site that you saw in that first photo. And we had brought the Disker out there and we're just kind of like tugging it around as a demonstration for the director of the Horticulture Center. And at this point, I was trying to sort of court her into essentially committing to this. It's about 0.75 acres of land for this earthwork. So I brought Clark and Sparky out there and was like, look at how cool they are. We could be doing this work and growing native plants instead of like weeds and crap. This was a really great reminder of the ways that our animals are ambassadors, not only for draft animal work, but also for bringing in people who are outside of the draft animal community. So yeah, that was a nice day.
Awesome. So we have learned that you hosted a day event.
Mhm.
So please tell us about that and how that went, what you did.
The field day event happened yesterday at the ISU Horticulture Center. The field day event was supported by the North Central SARE Partnership Grant. So that was part of what I had applied for funding for, was to have a day where people could come out and see draft animals working the land. So we had projected that we were going to get a lot more done than we did. We had some inclement weather. The soil was pretty sticky and it was a little bit slippery. So we got things plowed and then some stuff disked, but that's part of the process, right? Is like I haven't figured out how to control the weather. And then we had some vendors out, we had some local farms, we had the land connection out. We had the Illinois Stewardship Alliance, which is a organization that promotes small farms in Illinois. And we had Wild Ones, which is a native plant advocacy organization. So we had some folks tabling and draft animal demonstrations going. And then we had two speakers as well. So Logan Pappenfort, who is the interim director of tribal relations in the state of Illinois, and he is also the curator of Dixon Mounds, which is a archaeological mound site in Illinois. And then Lindsay Marshall, who is a colleague of mine. She gave a presentation from the perspective of a historian about animals and land. And yeah, it was really great. We had 150 people show up on a day where it was horrible weather. I was shocked. I was totally shocked. And I was able to have Emily, Tim, and Lori Bolden come down from Wisconsin with their buddy Mike. So they brought two teams of Percherons out that day. And that was really special too, because the first earthwork in this series, Emily and Lori came and plowed up that site in Wisconsin. So it was really special to have them here in Illinois plowing up the site for the flagship earthwork in this series. And what else did we do?
Well, so
We
was this the site where like the flagship site? And this is where you
Yes.
would be doing this work?
Yes.
And so you invited all these people to come and help plow it?
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was great too. We had one young team of oxen who I think it was their first time off of the farm, and like getting into a trailer in a long time. So they were there. That was great experience for them just to kind of tug a tire around. And they also were so happy to just let people like pet and love and sit on them for photos. So they were great to have there. And then we had a young single horse who is training for draft work right now. She came out and her horse was a little nervous at first, but settled really quickly. And so it was very fulfilling to also have the chance to give other people this opportunity to bring their young animals out, because I have also been in that spot where it's like my critters need to go do something. So yeah, it was really wonderful.
I'll just interrupt you a little bit on this. So I have a comment from John. As a student of the Teamster art, I can attest that even with a bit in their mouth, communication with a horse is still an ask, not a tell. In my experience, these two species interact with this work similarly in relationship to humans. As a wise woman once said, stimuli and response to stimuli is a living reaction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Yeah. So do it.
Wait,
Daphne,
there's, I don't know, my internet crashed. So
Oh.
Ruth Burke, you're
Do you
now
want me
the
to see here?
Can
I
you make
can.
me host?
Yes, I can.
I'm sorry.
You're good.
I saw you left and I went, oh, you must have to do, did one of your animals go over the fence again?
No.
That's never fun.
Yeah.
And one of the questions too that you had sent to me beforehand was, what advice can you give to a novice to start a team of steers? And I wanted to make sure that I shared my also novice advice on that. I think not feel, I think one of the best choices that I made was purchasing a pair of yearlings. And especially, I mean, every day is this evolving, like, I know nothing. Right? This process of realizing like there's just so much I don't know. Um, and I'm thinking now, like, okay, I think 2 years from now, I might know enough to start a, a team of calves on my own. But I'm really glad I bought a pair of like handy steers. And I also did that uh, from a utilitarian point of view, in that I wanted to be able to get my projects going a little bit faster. Um, so I was really glad I did that. I was really glad I did that. Although, like, I would have loved to have experienced Clark and Sparky as like teeny little babies, but knowing all of my bad habits, I think I would have just given them more bad habits. Um, so I think it's okay. It's okay to buy yearlings. It's okay to buy an older team. Um, when we view our animals as teachers, as equals, like, does that, I don't think there's anything that says you got to get a team of babies. And I would also say to set up relationships, hay, vet, where you can work, to do that as soon as you're like pretty sure you're going to get a team. And to also, again, use them as ambassadors for your community. So like we're showing up at a nursing home on May 31st. They have a rodeo theme. I was like, we don't quite fit into a rodeo theme, but maybe in a really, an experimental rodeo, Clark and Sparky are there. So we're going to go stand around at a nursing home on May 31st and just like let the residents and the public pet us. Then they're not going to be allowed to pet me. Um, and that everything takes longer than expected. And if you don't already have farm animals, or even if you do, to let your neighbors know that you were getting oxen, and that what they look like if they don't see them. Because Clark and Sparky got out once, and I was really glad that I let my neighbors know, like, hey, we have this team of oxen. They have horns. One looks like this, one looks like this. So when they saw them like trompsing through their woods on their trail cam, they knew who to call.
Daphne, do you have the pictures? Can you get them back?
I'm not host. You made Cindy host.
Oh,
Oh, I
no.
made Cindy. Here, I can pull them up. Let me pull them up. And I would also just tell people to just do it. Like get the team. I have been time and time again very moved by how generous people are, and don't let like not having a mentor in your backyard stop you. All right, can you see?
Yes.
Okay. This was that same day where we got to do hay for the first time, and they had like a giant load of hay. And Judy Richmond took this picture. It's very handy to have friends that like oxen and are good photographers. It's wonderful. This was also the day that I realized that nose baskets are a good investment.
Mm.
Like that is money well spent. They figure out real fast. And Clark, so sweet, so fat. He will sometimes just, it's like pitiful. If he's wearing the nose basket, he'll just like press his face against the ground.
Hmm.
I want to eat,
Want.
but I can't. And it's
That's
and it's
pitiful.
very endearing when he does that. So yeah, nose baskets, absolutely good investment. This was another day working just as demonstration out at the Horticulture Center, but this was a photo where our one of our local news outlets came out and took some professional photos. And one of the details that I love about this photo is that there's like a tiny swallowtail or something flying above their butts, which makes me happy. And then this was also our
How old were
first.
they?
They were This was 2020, Moda 2022. So they were like a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. And this one of the fun things that we do at Moda is we do a parade on Sunday. So all the teams of oxen make this little route around Tillers, and it's really lovely. This was also taken by Judy Richmond, but this was another fun day. And this trip was also like our first really long trailer drive that I did. And that was like that was like a high point where I was like, we got here, nothing broke down. We had a great time. We got home, nothing broke down. So I think for
That's a
me, that was
win.
like, yeah, girl, you can do a 7.5 hour trailer ride. And yeah, so that was great. And Leslie had actually given me the tip to get US rider insurance, which I think is mostly used for horses. But if you break down with your trailer, it's like AAA for livestock, and they'll help you find a safe place to go. They will help you get hay and water if you need it. So that would be if you're going to trailer your animals far, horses or otherwise. That's, I think, a few bucks well spent.
Yeah. So we have just 6 minutes left.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you one last question, and then we can get through your other pictures. What are your thoughts on the role of draft animals in these modern times?
I think draft animals are not a thing of the past. I think that they have great promise. And one of the things that stuck with me when I went to Germany was just this is like it's a super interdisciplinary field. Like you could be coming from all these different angles, and draft cattle are at the center. Draft horses are at the center. Um, and in our world, as I'm talking to you through a computer screen right now, in our world where everything we do is so mediated by technology and data, these opportunities to step away from that and to have an experience that is not mediated by those things, I think are going to become more and more valuable. And I'm sure that everybody on the chat and everybody listening later probably already knows that, but folks who haven't had a taste of that might not. So I think that alone makes it important, right? The usefulness of, on a utilitarian view, like the usefulness of draft animals and small acreage, I could not have predicted that. So I think they're extremely great to have on small acreage, and they are worthwhile. And if you can spend the time, especially in those first 2.5 years, getting out with them and, spending time training every day, that pays off. And yeah, super, super useful. As I mentioned before, the animals are ambassadors. So it is something, if you have a small farm, if you have draft animals, that's going to set you apart from the other person down the road that grows beans and specialty corn or whatever. And in a very large lens, when I think about the biggest problem facing humanity right now, it's climate change, right? It is our use of fossil fuels. And here we are with this, I don't know if you want to call it a solution, but an alternative to that is much more rewarding than getting on your tractor and doing your thing. I'm not saying that, you're going to be able to go out and plow your 17,000 acres of corn and beans with horses or oxen. I think you got bigger problems if that's all your farm does, but I mean, what a great alternative, right? This solution that I think many people look at as something that is extremely esoteric and outdated and is something just from hundreds of years ago. And it's like, well, we're at a different point now. And I think that draft animal power has a real promise to give us another way to move forward.
Great, great. Thank you. Do we have the other pictures?
I think I just did 10. Was I supposed to do? Oh,
Okay.
there's this last one.
There we
That's
go.
cute.
Look at that.
They're all
Wow.
fluffy in that one.
Are there other people on the chat that want to have questions for Ruth? No, I think I've gone through all that. I would imagine that your field days that you just had was such a great opportunity for that community to actually see maybe oxen for the first time.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
know myself, I say the word and they go, I don't even know what that is. And so I explain it and they're like, oh, who does that? I said, I do. But it's a great way to become an ambassador for it and to show people, make a connection with the earth, with people, with the food that how it's grown, that type of thing.
Yeah. I had a guy, who said he was a former farmer come up to me yesterday and say, what kind of draft horse is this? And I was like, they're not horses at all, sir. Are you sure you're a farmer? I was laughing, a really good laugh over that. But yeah, I mean, one of the infographics that I put up whenever we go out in public is like, what is an ox? Because people don't even know what an ox is. Yeah, I think they are not a thing of the past. They are these wonderful ambassadors, and they are really, really great animals. And I'm very, very glad to be part of this community. And again, all the generosity that I've been shown. I am taking the opportunities to do that now, and I look forward to paying that forward for hopefully many, many years to come.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate, I know how much you had going on. So I really appreciate you doing this
Yeah.
tonight with us. That was a lot of fun, and it was great to see you.
Yeah.
So
Thank
thanks so
you.
much, Ruth. All right. Thank you, Daphne.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.